NBA season underway. The Clippers and the Nets both making big statements last night. So what do you say we talk a little pressure cooker this season? And who better to help us join in on that debate? We got the man, Take Perkins, in the house. All right, guys, let's talk Western Conference first. Which player is under the most pressure, Stephen A?
To me, it's Kawhi Leonard. In the West, I put Kawhi Leonard right up in there. You know, listen, you can get away with being quiet all you want, and that's fine. Last year, he did a lot, man. He did a lot to put everybody on notice that he had arrived to take what belonged to King James. And guess what? It didn't happen. And it didn't happen in a lot of people's eyes, primarily because of him, not just his performance in Game 7, along with that of Paul George, but because of him being the face of the franchise, because of the expectations that were placed on him, because of the city that he lives in, the second largest market in the United States of America. The list goes on and on and on. We can look at a lot of players, but the name that comes to me is Kawhi Leonard, because the first time in his career that he had pressure applied to him. Wasn't that pressure in San Antonio? Wasn't necessarily there in in Toronto. He wanted out of San Antonio. They didn't move him to where he wanted to go, which was LA. So they sent him to another country, which is Toronto, and what have you. He didn't have that same amount of pressure because he was only going to be there for 1 year, and that was that. Last year was when the pressure was on. He did not answer the call in a Game 7, the same Game 7 that Jamal Murray dropped 40. Then you hearing about load management. They got an investigation going on right now with Jerry West and the Clippers in terms of the recruitment of Kawhi Leonard. The league is investigating. I spoke to Commissioner Adam Silver about that earlier this week. All of this stuff's going on. Kawhi Leonard is in the eye of the storm. Now, for the first time in his career, he's got the kind of pressure applied to him. Certainly not as much as LeBron James, because nobody has that kind of pressure, but relatively similar. We gonna see whether or not he answers the call, plain and simple.
Well, you just said it. The answer is clearly LeBron James. By far the most pressure in the Western Conference. If he was on a team that's not a clear-cut favorite, that's one thing. That's fine. He just won a championship. Here's the bottom line. He's with another top 5 player. If LeBron James got another top 5 player, they just won the title, they're favored, he has to win it again. Let me make this clear for Perk, who's shaking his head. This is a rhetorical question. You have a chance to answer it in a second.
I can shake my head
when Kobe and Shaq were playing together. When Kobe and Shaq were playing together, you're going to tell me just because they won a chip, the first chip, that there was more pressure on Chris Webber and them to win again? Nah, man. There was more pressure on Kobe and Shaq because they're the two best or two of the 3 best players in the world on the same team, and they were expected to win. The man, when he has a crew, is expected to win and always has the most pressure. You mean to tell me just because the Bulls repeated that it wasn't? Now, Michael Jordan has another top 5 player on the team in Scottie Pippen. They won a championship, but because of that, there's really more pressure on Charles Barkley because he never won than Michael Jordan when he's screwed up. Never that. There was always more pressure on Jordan when he was playing with Pippen, on Shaq or Kobe when they were playing together than anyone else in the conference. And there is more pressure on LeBron James playing with AD and coming off a chip than there is anybody else.
Well, Max, I have to respectfully disagree with that. Stephen A., you brought up a great point about Kawhi Leonard. It is a lot of pressure. He is one of the most guys that's under pressure in the Western Conference. But I got to go with Damian Lillard. Damian Lillard has took the jump as being an elite superstar now. We all know that Damian Lillard, in my opinion, is the best point guard in the league. And Stephen A., I know you go disagree and go with Steph Curry, and that's okay. But Damian Lillard is the best PG in the league today. And right now, when you look at this Portland Trailblazer team and what they did in the offseason and guys coming back healthy, they have one of the best rosters in the NBA. So with that being said, it's time for Dame Dollar to lead them to new heights and make them a contender. Get them to the finals. The pressure is on Dame Dollar. We know what he's capable of doing, but now he has every piece that he needs to contend for a title, and I believe that the pressure is on him in the Western Conference.
Well, the reason I disagree with you respectfully is not to say that Dame Dollar doesn't have pressure on him, because he is a superstar in this league. I got him number 2 behind Curry, because I think that Curry's not just his sniper-like abilities, but also the fact that he moves so much without the basketball for the most part. I think that makes him a very formidable threat from that point guard spot. Having said all of that, what I would say to you why I think that my choice of Kawhi Leonard eclipses Dame Dollar is because of all the ancillary things that I brought into the fold in terms of the investigation, in terms of the recruitment of Kawhi Leonard, in terms of Paul George and how the Clippers were asked to mortgage their future in order to get this guy, because it wasn't enough for you to go. You had to make sure you had this guy, Paul George, with him. The fact that Jamal Murray dropped 40 on you in a Game 7 when you were a no-show, particularly in that second half, after being up 3-1 and you blow a 3-1 lead in the Western Conference Finals. If it were not for the immediate backdrop of all of those things that transpired in the bubble and all of the stories that oozed out of the Clippers organization since they faltered against the Denver Nuggets in the Western Conference Finals, you would have a profound argument about Dame Lillard, KP. But the fact of the matter is, Damian Lillard just has to continue to do what he's been doing, balling, and hope that that drives them or propels them to the finals. In the case of Kawhi Leonard, all of these storylines that come with it, and the way you had New Balance had you basically sticking out your chest and saying a new day has arrived in L.A., we coming to take this town from King James. I just think that when you look at it from all of those different perspectives, it clearly is Kawhi Leonard who is on the hot seat in terms of being under that microscope, even more so than Damian Lillard.
Okay, all three of you have
LeBron James, by the way, no pressure.
LeBron's
a 4-time champion. 4-time champion. He's a reigning champion right now. That's not. We ain't worried about LeBron James.
Lillard and Kawhi ain't playing with another MVP caliber player. They're just not.
All right, but all three of you disagree on that one. Let's talk about the East. Who's under the most pressure in the East? Max, we'll start with you.
For the same reasons LeBron James is under the most pressure, the answer is KD in the East. Don't tell me about KD winning championships with a 73-win Warrior team. You just dropped KD in, didn't you have to really trade for him or anything, just dropped him into a 73-win team that had taken King James with Kyrie and Kevin Love to a Game 7 in the fourth quarter, a couple possessions at the end of the game. You add an MVP caliber player, now you want to give them credit for winning because he was the finals MVP. How much the defense had to concentrate on Steph and Clay and everybody. And of course, Kevin Durant should be the MVP of that series. And yeah, he won championships. But did that prove the same thing that a championship's supposed to prove, that you could lead a team there that's not guaranteed to win? No, KD made a bold choice to go to Brooklyn. Yeah, he's got a crew with him. Everyone needs a crew to win championships. But KD is under the pressure because just like LeBron, he's playing with another bona fide superstar. Giannis ain't playing with a dude like Kyrie. He's just not. No one else in the East is an MVP playing with another real star like KD. And therefore, when you're the man and you got a crew, the pressure's on you.
Go ahead, Perk.
I'm lost for words because, Max, I don't get it. 1 minute you're saying that it's not that much pressure on Kevin Durant and the Brooklyn Nets because he's coming off an Achilles injury and that you don't really require him to do that much this season. You don't even expect them to make it to the finals. You saying that you were saying earlier in the week that you were giving them a pass. Well, I believe it was last week that you were giving them a pass this season, that they just have to make it to the conference finals. Now you come on here and say that Kevin Durant is under the most pressure? No, It's Giannis. Giannis is under the most pressure. Back-to-back MVP last season, the Defensive Player of the Year and the MVP. The last two players to do that was Jordan and the King. And you mean to tell me that the furthest you could get was to the second round? You couldn't get past the Miami Heat? Now they give you another All-Star in Drew Holiday. You have zero excuses. The pressure is on Giannis to deliver, to step up in the big moments, not just having these phony stats of 25 and 12, but actually the eye test of closing out games and closing out series and taking the Milwaukee Bucks to new heights. You're the MVP. The pressure is on Giannis.
30 and 13, but okay.
Oh, man, whatever.
Kendrick Perkins, that's a great argument. And I don't really disagree with you. It's just that the name that comes to my mind is Kyrie Irving. And the reason why I say Kyrie Irving is that, look, this brother's a showstopper. He's box office. I mean, this dude is spectacular. But when we look at the rest of the Brooklyn Nets, we see KD out there moving all fluidly and everything, looking like he can score 40 anytime he wants to. We're paying attention to Dinwiddie and Karis LeVert and these boys and Joe Harris. You got Max talking about, I wouldn't even trade for James Harden, for crying out loud, because look at what Sean Marks has put together and the depth that they have. Okay, you take into account all of these things. What's the one question everybody's having about the Brooklyn Nets? Okay, is Kyrie going to be a distraction? Is Kyrie going to make sure that he's laser focused and locked in so he doesn't serve to disrupt whatever they're trying to accomplish? I don't believe he will. I believe in him. And I believe that the Brooklyn Nets are going to the NBA Finals, okay? But the question is, when we have question marks about the Brooklyn Nets, it's one thing to question it's one thing to question KD's health. It's another thing entirely to question his sidekick's mentality, his approach, his focus, whether or not he's going to be a distraction, etc., etc. Giannis got to do what he's got to do. He already averaged 30 and 13. We get that. But you're right, KP. He's got to get over that hump. No question. But I think the expectations that have been placed on the shoulders of the Brooklyn Nets, people aren't thinking Milwaukee and Giannis is going to stop them. They're thinking Kyrie is going to stop them. He has to make sure that doesn't happen. Look, they have to make sure that that doesn't happen. And that's why I come up with the name Kyrie as being the guy with the most pressure on him in the East.
Well, you guys said it before. Well, I respectfully disagree because I think Kyrie's a good pick, and I think Giannis is a good pick. And I think, KP, when you bring up what I was saying a week ago or earlier in the week, or last week, you're right. But they've played preseason games since then, and we just saw a regular season game with this team. KD already looks like 80% at least of KD. I expect that to get better. But not only that, when you talk about the Bucks, Drew Holiday, an all-star, Drew Holiday doesn't make the all-star team every year. What are you talking about? I like Drew Holiday a lot. He's not a great shooter from the outside. I like that pickup a lot. But that alone, Drew Holiday and AD played together. They didn't make any noise. Not really. Like, you act like that's a big thing. When you look at the supporting cast of the Nets, take away Kyrie for a second. Dinwiddie, LeVert, and Allen with Joe Harris match up. I'm not saying they're better, but they're at least almost as good as Holiday and Middleton and Brook Lopez. It's in the ballpark, even if it's not quite as good. And that's before you get to Kyrie Irving. And you mean to tell me there's more pressure on Giannis with his cast than KD with his? No way.
Yes, it is. And Max, first of all, just because you don't make the All-Star game doesn't mean you're not an All-Star caliber player. Bradley Beal didn't make the All-Star game, and the brother averaged 30 last year. So with that being said, we're still talking about Drew Holiday, and he's a level 3 type player. Chris Middleton, he made the All-Star game last year, Max. He's a level 3 type player. Giannis is the MVP. And again, the last two people to win the MVP and the Defensive Player of the Year was Michael Jordan and Hakeem Olajuwon. And they stepped up to the plate.
Guys.
Pressure
a lot of pressure
Giannis.
on a lot of players this season. 13 games on the schedule for today. A little something to do while you're breaking those Christmas cookies. Always a good time, gentlemen.